8 days after delivering probably the most important sermon of his ministry. Luke calls it the Sermon on the Plain. Matthew calls it the Sermon on the Mount. We don't know the elevation. But 8 days later, Luke tells us Jesus goes to the mountain to pray. This was what Jesus did a lot, especially when he expended a lot of ministry energy. This is something that most of us ministers, and there's multiple ones of you in the room, we're not very good at, right? We spend the energy, and we forget sometimes to go to the mountain away to pray. But this is what Jesus did. It's what he modeled for us. And there on the mountain, he takes some of his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, his advisors. And they witness what's nothing short of a miracle. There as they pray, Jesus' face, we're told, begins to glow, and clothes become dazzling white, and they don't know if they're in that weird half asleep state where they're just kind of dreams come to life, but they realize that this is real, whatever this is. And they see standing with Jesus Moses and Elijah, the giver of the law and the greatest prophet of the past era. And the three of them are there, and for a moment they catch a glimpse of the radiant glory of God. It's a miracle. It's amazing. It's hard to fathom, hard to explain. Miracles usually are. Peter, like most of us, whenever we witness something wonderful and we're lost in wonder, we have a hard time just being there, right? Just being present. And so Peter, like many of us, he wants to inject human ingenuity into this. This is so wonderful, Lord. Let's build an altar, one for you, one for Elijah, and one for Moses. Let's do something now. We can't just sit here and radiate and wonder. Let's do something with it. To which then a voice speaks in return. Not one on earth, but a voice from beyond. This is my son. Listen to him. And then poof, life goes back to normal. Or so we think. It's amazing, this story. This is Transfiguration Sunday. This is a very important day in the life of the church, but it's one that I'd be willing to bet most of us don't really understand all that well. It's kind of that weird in-between time, Epiphany's past and ordinary time, and it's that Sunday before the season of Lent begins. And we get Lent, at least a little bit, right? I mean, you're kind of preparing, okay, I got 3 more days to have fun, and then I'm going to give up something on Wednesday, I promise. Whether it's chocolate or wine or cursing, I don't know what it is for you this year, but you're going to put on your most somber face, and you're going to be very, very penitential and just... That's Lent. We kind of get that whole discipline thing, even when we don't like it. But Transfiguration Sunday precedes Lent. It's almost as though God is reminding us that you can't really have the fortitude to make it through Lent without first beholding the glory that waits beyond. The glory of God. There's a few things that just are amazing about this story. One is, for Luke at least, I want to play with the elevation change because I think it's really symbolic. In 8 days, Jesus goes from preaching on a plain to a miracle on a mountain. And isn't life that way? That we find ourselves on plains, and sometimes when we're lucky, we find ourselves on the mountaintop, and then there are other seasons of life that we're actually deep in a valley. But the good news of Transfiguration is that we don't manufacture this. There's nothing really we can do. Peter tries and he's rebuked. God's presence comes as a gift that you receive. You can't whip it up. You can't build it, engineer it, create it. It comes as a gift to you. And the good news is that gift comes whether you're in a mountaintop season of life, whether you're just in the ordinary plains, or whether you're in the valley. The presence of Christ is with you. And that's really good news. That's really good news. We're also reminded in this story of that human nature I mentioned, that we want to build things, right? And it's a wonderful side of human nature. And buildings aren't bad. Building altars, monuments, statues, whatever it may be to mark occasions, those aren't bad at all. But it's interesting that when Peter jumps there to say, this is a wonderful thing, let's honor it with a monument, an altar, a statue, a building, God says, no, what's more important is a transformed life. See, we can build buildings to erect things to honor whatever it is, and that's good. But you know what's sometimes more important? A changed heart. A life that shows evidence that whatever that thing is that you're marking, that it had an impact on you to lead you down a different road, closer to God. We don't need altars, Peter. We need lives that are changed because they've caught a glimpse of what God's glory looks like. That's really important. And how are lives changed? I mean, the voice from beyond is pretty clear. Our life is changed when we listen to Jesus, to what he says, to how he lives. Luke alone, just last week, tells us a good bit of challenging things that we need to listen to. Love your enemy. And I know that's hard. What if our enemy doesn't agree with us? What if they don't vote like us? What if they agree with something that's very different than us? Love your enemy, nonetheless, Jesus says. Don't pass judgment on others. Well, but what if I'm feeling self-righteous? What if I'm right about this? Nope. Don't pass judgment, Jesus says. What about doing good to those who don't do good to me? Shouldn't we only do good to those who do good to us? Luke tells us that Jesus says, nope, even the sinners do that. Bless those even who do you wrong. Jesus says things like forgive even when it's difficult. And Lord knows it can be difficult sometimes, right? I don't know about you, but there are just moments in life where forgiveness seems almost impossible. And I think God would say that's okay. Wanting to forgive is the first step in actually forgiving. And wherever that want is, God can make up the difference. But Jesus says forgive, even when it's hard. There are lots of things Jesus says with his life as well. He says it with words, but sometimes it's more powerful even to watch him do it. Welcome the stranger. Jesus loves this way of just reaching out to people who are lost, people who are left out, people who are pushed to the margins of society, and for whatever time it is with them, they are the center of his world. He models for us the lesson that we welcome the stranger, no matter who they are, no matter what division or whatever it is we put between us and them, we welcome the stranger because Jesus did. And God says to listen to him if we want our lives changed. Jesus modeled with his life this lesson that we don't need bigger walls between us, but we need longer tables and more seats. Story after story, whether it's told in parable form or whether it is his living witness, Jesus loved coming to a table and making sure that everybody knew that in God's table, everybody has a seat. Literally nobody gets left out. And if there's not enough food, he'll do a miracle to feed even more. Or it's a one-on-one encounter with people like Zacchaeus that nobody liked. He was a jerk, but not to Jesus. Listen to him. We listen to the words of Jesus to have our lives transformed. That's the lesson of Transfiguration, maybe, or part of the miracle, even. What is Jesus saying to us today? What's Jesus saying to you? What words could change your life? Lessons from him, words of encouragement, words to direct your path to live differently. You read a little bit about the United Methodist Church in the news this week, haven't you? News stories. Gosh, the CBS Evening News, my favorite evening news show, ran a story about the United Methodist Church. We made the news this week, and it wasn't the best of news. Our PR people are going to need to work on improving our image a little bit, probably. And it's because we had a general conference that didn't end very well. People argued. It just wasn't pretty. Hurt feelings all over the room. I mean, it just was a mess. And I'm not going to get on the ins and outs of General Conference. We had an informational session beforehand. A number of you attended. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them as best I can. Reach out to me, please. Email, call, text. I'll have lunch with you. But we won't get into the politics of it. But I do feel it's necessary, especially as we consider what it means to listen to Jesus in the life of the church, to maybe give you a couple of fundamental truths that I want you to walk away with today in light of this mess called General Conference. One is, Trinity Church is a reconciling congregation. Now, we officially voted on that back in October, but that spirit has been living in this church for 20 plus years. I'm probably the third pastor now that kind of has come along in that mold, but this preceded me, and it's such a gift. We are a reconciling church because we believe there are no restrictions in the life of the church. Our two fundamental sacraments, baptism and communion, are literally open to all. And because of that, I think the entire life of the church should be. Now, there are restrictions and rules, and we're going to stick with where we are and continue being who we are within the framework of our book of discipline. But I want you to know we are a reconciling church because we believe literally there are no restrictions, that everybody has a seat at Christ's table. And we want to make sure that that happens at all times. Another truth is we will continue to do our very best to embody grace and to share that grace with others. One of the baptismal vows, I mentioned baptism, one of the lines in our baptismal vows are so beautiful. And it says this, part of our baptism, that we vow to resist evil, oppression, and injustice in whatever forms they present themselves. That's the language. To resist evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves. And I want you to know that your baptismal identity transcends any denominational, whatever politics there is. Baptism is deeper. That's who you are. That's who Christ calls us to be. And the third fundamental truth I want to offer you is a pastoral word. Lord knows the press has been all over the place, and press, if you don't understand the nuances of Methodism, things just get painted. But I feel it's necessary as your pastor to offer a pastoral word in the midst of this sermon, and I want to offer it especially to our LGBT members, because there's a number of you. I want you to know, all of you, but especially those who may be identify as LGBT, you are loved. Your church loves you. God loves you. That is so simple to say, but God is so real. The good news about General Conference is this. That's not the church. It's this politic and body that meets and gathers and tries to make decisions, and they fail at it most of the time. But the church, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, is the place where you come to worship, where you come to serve, where you come to grow, where you come to love and to be loved. Your church has not changed one bit. We are still who Christ calls us to be. You are loved. Transfiguration, right? That's a terrible bridge into that. Let me try that again. Transfiguration Sunday. I thought this week of this line, of all the hymns, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, it came to mind. But there's this wonderful line in it. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, forgive the masculine pronoun there, let us live to set them free. The miracle of transfiguration says that when we behold the glory of God, we are set free. We are set free from fear. We are set free from the things that want to divide us from one another. We are set free to love graciously, radically, forcefully love. We are set free. And as we bask in the glory of that light, as we absorb the warmth of the light and glory of God, we are filled with that light. And we are empowered to come down from the mountain and to reach out and to love radically and wonderfully all people, just like Jesus. Amen. Hey, thanks for watching the latest sermon here at historic Trinity Church in Savannah, Georgia. I'm Reverend Ben Gostin. I'm the senior pastor here at Trinity Church. And I want to take this opportunity to invite you. If you're ever in Savannah, Georgia, we would love for you to visit us on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. We're located on Telfair Square, been here since 1848. Also, you can check out the comments below for a way to give if you feel so led. Again, you're welcome anytime here at Trinity Church.